started, and then people will come in as they arrive. I'm Karen O'Donoghue. I'm part of the leadership of the Education, Mentoring, and Outreach team here at the IETF. And I'd like to welcome you to the IETF and also to the IETF Newcomers overview. The one thing I would like to ask at the end of this, there's a slide at the end that has a survey. We're definitely interested in any feedback that you have about this tutorial and also about your overall experience at the IETF. You'll see on the agenda there's a newcomers feedback session on Thursday at breakfast. So you would definitely be invited to come there and provide any feedback that you have on how the session went for you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the two presenters for today. And we have Anshul and Rich Sauls, who will be providing that tutorial for you. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to them, and you all have a good tutorial.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to IETF. A little bit about myself. I'm Anshul Malhotra. I'm a grad student at Boston University, USA. My research basically focuses on the security of internet protocols such as NTP, DNS, BGP, TLS, etc. Here at IETF, I'm involved at a couple of working groups, including the NTP working group. I also serve as Security Area Directorate within IETF. This is my 8th IETF meeting now. Wow, that's a lot. I just realized it. Okay. And guys, well, I'm going strong and I'm sure you'll survive it too. So let's get you all started. Okay, let's see. So welcome to the IETF. I would like to thank Scott Bradner and Mike Jones for drafting the earlier versions of this presentation. I haven't ever met them personally, but I'm sure they're great guys. This is an excellent presentation, you'll see. Okay, so there'll be two terms. There's first-timers and newcomers. So first-timers are the ones for whom this is the first meeting, first IETF meeting, and the newcomers who have attended up to 5 meetings, okay? So this is for the newcomers and the first-timers. This presentation is basically divided into 3 parts. First is the introduction to the newcomers activities that will take place throughout the week of IETF. In the second part, there is an introduction to the structure of IETF, and I will tell you a little bit about its related organizations. And in the third part, we'll tell you about the IETF week in a nutshell and further resources that you can look up for more information. Okay. Guys, this is a very, very important slide, IETF Notewell slide. You'll see it a lot throughout the IETF week, especially at the beginning of all the working group sessions. This Notewell applies to all the participants of the IETF. It's basically a reminder that all the participants who are participating at IETF in person or remotely, they agree to certain policies. I do not expect you to read all of this right now, but I would recommend you should read it before you are participating at IETF. And the next slide, this is a list of all the documents that tells you all the policies that you abide by when you're participating in IETF. BCP stands for Best Current Practices. These are all the BCP documents. It's about internet standards processes, working group processes, all the working groups that are happening here. Then there are policies on anti-harassment procedures, code of conduct, copyright, patents and participation, and then there is this last one on privacy policy. It's the latest one, I think, that tells you about the how IETF handles all the information that you provide to them, if that matters to you. So you can read through all these documents. There's a link on the top of the slide that you can go to and read these documents. Okay, so we at IETF take a great effort to help you get you started through the week and to provide you all the necessary resources and information for that. And this is a list of a few, almost all the activities that are specific to newcomers here at IETF. The first one is this newcomers tutorial that is happening right now. It's a 1-hour tutorial. We'll give you an overview of IETF week. Then there is this IETF quick connections that is happening today on November 4. It has limited space. It requires a pre-registration. So you can go to this newcomers webpage and register there. It's a short one-to-one conversation with the experienced IETFers. It's a very valuable event. I would suggest you should go there. Then immediately after that, there is a newcomers meet and greet. It's from 4 to 5. It's for the newcomers and the leadership at IETF. There'll be working group chairs. There'll be other members from the other experienced members. It's a very informal and laid back meeting. There'll be no formal speeches or presentations. You can just interact. It's a very valuable opportunity to mingle with and interact with working group chairs and other experienced members of the IETF. And most importantly, there'll be beer, there'll be wine, there'll be soda, and there'll be appetizers. So you should definitely go there. Okay. Okay, how many of you have mentors assigned already? Very few of you. I would highly recommend you should get a mentor for yourself. The mentors are available throughout the week. They can provide you answers. They can provide answers to your very specific questions. They can help you network with other people. If you want to talk to someone you don't want to approach personally, you can tell them. They'll help you with that. Any sort of questions you can ask them. It's really helpful. I did it for the first 3 IETF meetings of mine, and it was really helpful. Okay, then we have a newcomers dinner. That's Monday evening. It's not an IETF funded event. It is organized by the Secretariat, and I think you have to pay a $1.25 fee for that. You can register for this event as well. It's an informal event. And then finally, we will have a newcomers feedback session on Thursday. There'll be hot breakfast. And we would love to hear back from about the effectiveness of all the activities that that's happening for newcomers. You can tell us what more you would have liked to heard before coming here, or anything that you like or dislike, something that can be improved. Your feedback is really valuable here. Okay, so this is about the newcomers activities. What should you expect from this 55 minutes tutorial now? So we'll give you an overview of all the information and resources that are needed to get you started here and be an active participant at the IETF. And we'll tell you strategies to how to connect to people, how to approach people, about the culture of IETF. But other than that, there is a lot more to learn about IETF, about its history, about how to actually write standards documents, and much more. And it's really hard to squeeze that all into a 1-hour tutorial. But we'll definitely provide you sources for further information where you can go and read more about other things in detail. But this short tutorial will be a kickstart for you. You can survive through the week with this tutorial. And there's this link to the YouTube channel where you can find information about more advanced topics of IETF. Okay, so the IETF, any questions so far, by the way? It's a good practice. You can come up to mic and ask questions. Okay, let's go ahead. So the IETF and related organizations, I'm going to give a little bit of overview about IETF and its related organizations. So first of all, very important IETF mission, and I'm going to read it aloud. The mission of the IETF is to make the internet work better by producing high quality, relevant technical documents that influence the way people design, use, and manage the internet. So basically, the IETF mission is to to deploy and maintain standards for internet technologies that can be used by everyone, ranging from an end user to internet service providers or other content providers. We try to make sure that the technology that we develop here is scalable, it's effectively deployed, and it is secure. And the mission of IETF is based on certain principles. So at IETF, we believe in open access, which means anybody who is interested can participate, see what's going on here, and if they want to say something, they can make their voice heard. One of the ideas behind IETF is to make all the participants, the list of attendees, all the working mailing lists, everything that's going on, all the discussions that are going on the mailing list public, so that everyone can see and participate and comment on it. The other principle is voluntary participation. So all the participants at IETF are highly motivated and self-driven towards furthering the mission of IETF. Then we have this principle, IETF has this principle of rough consensus and running code. So all the developments and work that go around at IETF is based on both sound engineering principles and the actual real world deployment and implementation of all this work that goes here. So these are the few missions and guiding principles of IETF mission. Okay, so IETF is a standards development organization, but it is different from other standards development organizations that you might have encountered. So first of all, the participation at IETF is individual based. There is no formal membership criteria, unlike other standard organizations that usually have some membership criteria. Here, it's completely individual based. Second, IETF does not follow any formal voting process to reach a consensus. It's very unlike other standards organizations. Here we believe in reaching consensus, rough consensus, through a process called humming, and we'll talk about it later in the tutorial. We'll talk more about it in the tutorial later. Another thing that differentiate IETF from other SDOs is that there is no formal role of government or any other company per se. It's a very independent organization. Unlike other standard development organizations, IETF does not mandate any standards to anyone. It's a very bottoms-up approach. So it's a very market-driven approach. So if someone likes a proposal, they would go, they would develop it, they would implement it, they would deploy it, and then see how it works, and then provide feedback. And then there is this another iteration where we would improve it. And finally, when we reach a rough consensus, then only the standards are made. It's nobody's mandating any standard on anyone. It's a very flexible, bottoms-up, market-driven approach. It's very unlike other standards organization where they go top to bottom, where things are first standardized and then deployed. IETF standards are mostly based on internet technologies, and it's unique. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so IETF is basically, the working of IETF is divided into areas, which areas are divided based on similar working groups. So on the slide, you see 7 areas, but it's very dynamic. It keeps changing. It keeps changing based on the needs. Sometimes a couple of areas merge to become one, or we can introduce new areas if need be. So for those of you who are here for technology, you should definitely read the areas that you're interested in. There are several working groups under each area, and each area makes sure that the current needs of the internet are being addressed by these working groups. So each area has several working groups, and then these working groups work on standardizing different internet technologies. Names are pretty self-explanatory, but I would suggest if you're interested in any particular area, you should go and read about it more. Okay, so this is a very interesting slide, the IETF and Consensus. It's very unique and very different from other organizations. Basically, at IETF, we do not believe in majority rule philosophy. This is a very nice IETF mantra from David Clark. It's an old mantra. We reject kings, presidents, and voting. We believe in rough consensus and running code. And I talked a little bit about rough consensus and running code. Rough consensus is an interesting, it's very interesting because it does not necessarily mean that we reach, everybody agrees to something, but it does not mean that it's a compromise either. So it's somewhere in between. It means that all issues are addressed, but not necessarily accommodated. So all the working groups are basically led by working group chairs, and they are responsible. They make sure that all the dissenting opinions are heard, but they do not control or hinder the progress of any of the ideas. So basically, humming is one way of measuring the consensus in a room. It's basically the working group chair asks the people present in the room to hum, to measure the just to measure the temperature of the room, like how many people, to judge on a spectrum of completely acceptable to completely non-acceptable opinion from the people. Also, this humming is not the final, this consensus reached in the room is not the final thing. This is taken to the mailing list so that the people who were not present in the room or were not able to participate remotely can also tell their opinion on the mailing list. So the working group mailing list consensus is also taken into account. And there's this really interesting RFC 7282. I would recommend you should go and read it. There's a lot more about how the consensus is reached in IETF about the humming procedure. Okay, so the IETF culture. IETF culture is really unique. IETF is a very old organization, and you'll find very passionate, smart, and vocal people here. As I said, it's a voluntary organization. So the people here are very self-driven. They are highly motivated. Sometimes it's a little overwhelming, but in the end, I can assure you that what all of them are trying to make sure is to reach the best decision. So they're just very passionate about it. Second, technical excellence and topical knowledge is highly valued here. So no matter who you are, where you come from, who you work for, if you have something good to say, something really contributing, then people will listen to you. So do not hesitate. Always go in and ask questions and share your opinion. It's overwhelming, but you have to just go in and do it. Don't worry. Dress code. Yes, so there is no formal dress code. Mostly you'll find people here wearing t-shirts and jeans. Nobody will judge you for anything. If you're interested in wearing coat, do it. So whatever you're comfortable in, just go for it. Then since it's a very old organization, people have been coming here for 20 years. They have known each other very well. So it gives you a very close work. Some people have worked here very closely. It gives you a very close working relationship. People know each other really well. So if you see people shouting at each other in the hallways, they are not fighting with each other. It's just the way that they communicate with each other. So it's a very good way to make long-term good relationships here. Okay. You're going to hear a lot of acronyms throughout this IETF week. Do not worry much about them. As you get more involved in IETF activities, it's an eventual process. You'll learn them eventually. I don't know all of them either. But this is a list of, this is actually basically a list of all the working parts that make IETF processes and policies work. So this is not a comprehensive list. These are a few of them that are immediately maybe relevant to you as a newcomer. So I'll give you, just for the sake of completeness, I'll give you little bit of overview of few of them. So IAB, it's Internet Architecture Board. It basically provides an oversight of the internet architecture and the standards process for in the long time run. IESG is Internet Engineering something group, steering group. This group is responsible for the technical management of IETF activities and the final approval of the internet standards process, the documents. Then there is IRTF, Internet Research Task Force. This group is basically focused on long-term research problems in the internet. And its parallel organization, IETF, that is focused more on standardizing the immediate needs of the internet. So both of these work in parallel. There are a lot of IRTF groups. There is CFRG, that is the Crypto Forum Research Group. There is a Humans Right Protocol group. There's a whole list of IRTF groups that you can look up and see what you're interested in. IAOC, it's in IETF Administrative and Operational something. This is, as the name suggests, it's responsible for the fiscal and administrative support of the IETF standards process. I would say you do not have to focus much on all these working parts of IETF for now. Just focus more on the technological areas that I introduced in the slides earlier, but you're free to read about these areas if you're interested, these groups, if you're interested in. All the information is available online. And with that, any questions so far? Okay, Rich. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to talk about what this upcoming week is like. My name is Rich Sauls. I've been involved with IETF mailing lists for way too long, many gray hairs ago. I've been coming to the IETF almost all of the meetings for 6, 7 years, and I work for a company called Akamai Technologies in Cambridge, Mass. It's common when people stand up at the mic to say their name and company affiliation. You don't work by companies. Every contribution here is as an individual, but it helps identify people. And if 5 people from Microsoft stand up and say one thing, and 5 people from Google stand up and say the opposite thing, it can be a useful data point. Purely examples, purely hypothetical. Okay. The way the week is organized. Now, one thing we're doing this meeting, is we're meeting in 4 days instead of 5, it's an experiment. The working group sessions form the core and the main reason for why the IETF gets together. We do it 3 times a year in a 1-1-1 plan. March is in the US or Canada. July is, did I get that right? Yeah, July is in Europe, and then November is in Asia. The working groups total right now, they're about 130. They come and go. At any given point, we'll be creating some new working groups and closing some down. We don't have groups that exist just to exist for their own purpose. Once they've done what they said they were going to do, we shut them down. The mailing lists remain active, but the groups don't have anything to do. They're birds of a feather session. These are informal gatherings. to see if there's interest within the IETF community to do something. Usually the thing is there'll be an IETF meeting and people get together at a bar typically, or the lounge or the lobby, talk about something. Then there'll be a birds of a feather session where at the next IETF, there'll be a formal structure meeting. And then 1 or 2 times after that, a working group will be, 1 or 2 meetings after that, a working group will be formed. This year there are 2 BOFs. They are all listed in the agenda, both listed in the agenda. IRTF is a parallel but independent organization, quasi-independent. They're also meeting this week. And Anshul mentioned some of the working groups that were involved there. There are area-wide sessions. You mentioned how the IETF technology groups are divided into currently 7 areas. There'll be, for example, a security area meeting where anything at all related to security will be discussed there. Someone will say, oh, I have this draft that where should it go? That'll be dispatched to something else. Each working group will either report or have previously written an email of what their status is and so on. A plenary. Plenary is an old Latin word that means everybody meets. There's one plenary, a meeting. It's in the big ballroom in the last session of the day, where all those alphabet soup organizations that were mentioned before give a short presentation. There's often an award ceremony for people, recognition, the Pastel Award, and others. The weekend before the meetings are hackathons and code sprints, where people, for example, want to do DNS security. They'll all get together in a room, I think it's on the 5th floor, and work on things over the course of the weekend. The education tutorials, the meet and greets and all of those happen on Sunday. And then the bulk of the week is the working group meetings. The sponsor, whoever sponsors the meeting, gets a lunch session where, someone, typically a fellow or a senior VP level, will come and talk about something that's of interest to their company, purely optional attendance. There's tutorials during the week, some, and other kinds of sessions. There's also social events. So this is what the lounge the lobby looks like at almost any given meeting. There's people, in the front sitting there on their laptops, collaborating, maybe being completely independent. What we call hallway meetings, where at the end of a session, it's not uncommon, you come up to the front of the room and you say, hey, Anshul, I really like, can you explain what some of these alphabet soup letters are? And since there's somebody else coming into the room in 10 minutes, you go out into the hallway and you discuss it. Or you say, hey, I really liked what you mentioned when you talked about this proposal. And so those kind of conversations happen all the time. They also happen a great deal during the official snack breaks. Cookies in the afternoon, coffee in the morning, that kind of stuff. There is an IETF application, a scheduling app. You can get it at the Play Store or the App Store, iPhone or Android. It lists all of the agenda sessions. It lets you tag the ones that you think are, of interest, tag the ones that are of interest to you. The agenda, it's posted on the 2nd floor downstairs where you registered. It's also posted online. The app and the agenda also have floor plans. I couldn't have found this room without the floor plan. One hotel, London meeting, they actually made a game of finding all the meeting rooms because the floor plan was so complicated. And so if you got your picture taken at all of the meeting rooms, you won a badge or something. Okay, working groups. This is the heart and soul of the IETF. Most of the work in a working group is done on the mailing lists. That means that in order to participate in the IETF, all you have to do is join a mailing list. It's a pretty low barrier to entry. The groups, they're open to anybody. We have, it's a mailing list controlled by mailman. There's spam filters. Occasionally things get through. Very, very rarely. Occasionally, the chairs of a working group will pull someone aside virtually and say, hey, tone it down a little. You're being a jerk. The face-to-face meetings are for catching everybody up on what has been done since the last meeting, presenting in a format like this, what changes were made to the various documents, and then, asking for consensus or reviewing them and so on. We try very hard to enable remote participation. You see that the middle screen here is with Meet Echo, the gentleman in the back room. People can, in the IETF web pages, there's always a reference to Meet Echo, and you can click on web-based app that will let you, share your screen, participate remotely. There's a big red button up there on the table. When somebody remotely wants to talk, one of those two people listed, for example, they raise their hand using the app. They get put to the front of the queue, as it's called, and anything they say is repeated, broadcast through the speakers here. There can also be, it takes a little more advanced coordination, but there can be remote presentations where somebody has a document, a draft that they want to talk about, but they're unable to attend the meeting in person. With the working chairs and Meet Echo, we can schedule that, so that's possible. BOFs, as I said, they precede the formation of a working group. Sometimes it's a one-time deal. They don't always form a working group. We had one on network-based file systems, not NFS, but think of Dropbox and its analogs. And we had a meeting with that. We discussed it, and we said, no, the industry is proceeding along. There's not a great deal of interest in making, all of those different things, Google Drive and Dropbox all interoperate, so we're just not doing anything. They generally meet once. That's not quite true. They often, so often once, sometimes twice. Sometimes it can be once if it's really obvious we want to do some kind of work. Sometimes it could be twice. Sometimes it could be once, and then wait a year and come again, and so on. Meeting etiquette, how to behave, how to be a well-behaved nerd. The documents, try to read the ones that are of interest in your area or the sessions that you're going to attend, or at least skim through them. Expect that if you don't read them, when the people present, you will be at a loss, which is okay if you're just getting started. But because they won't talk about the whole document and all of the background, there will just be slides, and the slides are all very boring, black letters, full white screen, bullet list. Here's what changed since the last version. And if you don't know what the last version was, then the changes may not be understanding. But if it's, if the last version was non-existent to the new version, then it makes sense. But if you're looking at the changes between version 15 and 16, knowing what was in version 16 can help. Enjoy yourself. This is a fun time. It is fairly casual and relaxed, but also intense. Remember to sleep. Nah, sleep's optional, right? Do that the following week. One thing we try to do, I've noticed increased emphasis on this, is the last bullet, respectful and tolerant towards others. As Anshul mentioned, many of the people who come to these things have been coming since IETF 1, so that's 30, 40 years ago, and they've known each other for that long, so they can be brusque, they can be rude, they can be, not locker room talk, but they can be, not the way you would speak to someone you just met. Don't be put off by that. Okay? Just don't. The way the sessions work, all of the working group sessions are organized exactly like this room. The chairs who are responsible for directing the meeting, who have previously set the agenda and so on, they sit up at the front table here. They can control the displays or delegate it to the person speaking. The person here, there's usually a pink box. There's a camera so that anything you say as a presenter is live streamed over the internet, and is also recorded for you later, put up on YouTube later on. The typical way things work is somebody will present, here's what's happened in my draft. Then they'll be, okay, are there questions? And there's a mic or two mics, depending on the size of the room, or 6 mics if it's the plenary. People will stand up at the mic, and the chairs will recognize each person in turn. So someone will say, most of my involvement in the IETF is in security, so all of my examples are in security. So someone will say, hey, you mentioned doing this, and the key size is like 64 bits. I don't think that's strong enough. And often, especially if you're a first timer, someone will say name, say, oh yeah, Rich Sauls Akamai. Now the key size you're saying is 64, and you say it at the mic there. Your picture's not broadcast there, just the words are. There is a person who is called the Jabber Scribe. There's an online chat room where remote participants who can hear the video, hear the audio and see the video, can ask questions. Then that person will stand up and say, you know, in the Jabber room, somebody said so-and-so. Technical questions and comments are very welcome. At the beginning of every meeting, there will be the note well, the 2 slides that Anchal showed you. That'll be compressed into 1 slide, what's called an eye chart. Very, very small print. You're not expected to read it or be able to read it, but you have to acknowledge that you've seen it. And then you sign what's called a blue sheet, because they're traditionally on blue paper. That shows that you understand the rules of participation, and you're willing to participate. The blue sheets are then scanned. They're also put all online and available. The meeting materials, everything that's presented, all the slides that are presented, including, like, say, this one, the agenda, all of that is stored in a website and available for perusal later on. There's an official minute taker, a volunteer picked, or appointed or picked by the chairs. The minutes are posted, reviewed by the working group, posted in the website as well. Okay, I'll come back to some of the other details. The IETF, it's an activity of the IAB. The meanings of activity, disassociated, limited liability corporation, it's kind of all boring. They do more researchy topics. One of the cool things they do is every year they give the Applied Networking Research Prize, which means that in this academic journals, IETF, IRTF members nominate people, and 2 people get a prize. They get $1,000, I think it is, in free travel to the next IETF. So it's a kind of cool thing. The bigger group meetings, I mentioned the area sessions, the plenaries, and lunch. Lunch talks are very, very informal. The plenaries usually get most of the people. And the area sessions get, a lot of the hardcore people who are interested. I really care about, the domain system. So I'm going to go to all of the DNS areas. The hackathons and code sprints, this is what they look like. The picture on the bottom is very representative. A bunch of people working at their, at their laptop, in collaboration, looking at, we're all working in the same GitHub repo or what have you, or testing interop. You'll see different vendors working and getting things working. There is a session, I forget when it is, but then the results of the hackathon, which were yesterday and today, will be publicly announced. Here's what we got. The 2 big hackathons, or one of the biggest hackathons I cared about was, we got 10 implementations of TLS 1.3 working before the RFC was done. That was kind of cool. Networking and social events. I don't think we have a social event this time. The picture on the left is from Singapore. At the registration time, you would buy a social ticket, usually $30 US, something like that. This one was from Singapore at the National Aquarium. It was kind of cool. The picture on the right, is from an IETF Sisters Lunch, SYSTERS. That's people who, women or self-identify as a female are all welcome to come to that. There's I think a breakfast, and there's a couple of social events. You can go. Some of the resources available. Picture soon. As Anshul mentioned, this is kind of being revised a little bit, but pardon me. The secretariat are those people in the blue shirts. If you came here earlier, you saw them, working at the front trying to get all the laptops working. They're the people who come and set up all the signage. They handle all the registration. Anything related to the logistics of the meeting is the secretariat, and also logistics over the course of the year. The RFC editor, that's people who, C++ is not their first language. English is their first language. They copy edit. They will track down and make sure all of the references in a document are correct, that the subject and the verb agree, and all of those kinds of things. The IANA staff, the Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, those are people who keep, again, on the web, the files and registration of all of the things such as what is port 80, that's HTTP, what is port 25, that's the mail protocol, what is 443, that's HTTPS, all the way through to what are the different kinds of records in DNS, what are the different packet types in IP, and so on. That's what the IANA does. The executive director is the person who sits at the top of the legal entity that runs things. Somebody has to sign the contract with the hotel for 1,000 people, right? The Ombudsteam. Linda, wave. There we go. We take anti-harassment pretty seriously. If somebody is bothered or feels uncomfortable or feels they're being harassed, find Linda or either of these fine folks. Or you can go to the registration desk, say, I'm looking for the Ombudsteam, and talk to them, and they will make sure your concerns are addressed. Badges, dots, and ribbons. We've stepped a little bit away from this. I have a blue dot. That means I chair one or more working groups. Linda has a green ribbon at the bottom. That means she's on the Ombudsteam. The host gets something. The color codes. If you see somebody with a dot or a stripe underneath, it means, oh, they're in a position of some kind of authority. It may be nothing, it may be a very big deal, but it also means that you can, if they have a smiley face, which I think they didn't do this year, this meeting, that means they're particularly welcoming and encouraging you to talk. There is also a bowl down by the registration desk with blank ribbons and markers and things, and you can make your own, so the ribbons mean less than they used to because there's a lot of jokes. Specific links. Tutorials are all available in one spot. And the meeting wiki, we use Track. It's a wiki system, right? Anybody can edit pages and add to them. I think there's a data tracker link. Okay. There's a first-time attendees mailing list. You don't have to be first time. It could be your first, second, third. Oh, it's been a really long time. What's the IETF like now? Anybody can join the list. You can find most of these things off the IETF front page. The sisters group call out in particular is, I think that's the only real affinity group we have. And then there were various mailing lists. There's one for all of the attendees. When you registered, you were asked if you want to join the attendees mailing list. Those of you who are on it have seen, for example, that the day before the meeting starts, it's mostly about how do I get from the airport to the hotel. When there's a social event, the bulk of the mailing list is, hey, does anybody have a spare social ticket to sell? Towards the end of the week, most of the mailing list is, I left my charger in one of the meeting rooms. Has anybody seen it? There's other lists for the traveling companions if somebody's bringing their spouse or significant other. There is a light program of activities for that, and so on. Information. So outside of the www.ietf.org, shift change. So outside of the www.ietf.org website, once you start participating, reading documents, contributing to mailing lists, and so on, this is really the most important site. datatracker.ietf.org. It has web pages for every single working group. They all follow the same structure. There's a database backing all of this stuff. It generates the web pages on the fly. You can see, you can't quite see it. So at the lower left here is a page on the tools. Those are the open source tools we use to produce the documents. On the data tracker on the right, you see there's the TLS working group. You can find lists, the active working groups. You can see all of them. So if you go to datatracker.ietf.org, group/edu, you can get a link to the slides that are being presented here. I think that'll also be sent out to the newcomers list. You can also find it through the IETF homepage if you look on the newcomers page and so on. the tool. So data tracker is pointing to purple. The tools is pointing to the, what is it? Pointer. Cool. The tools is less interesting until you actually start writing documents. It also is even then becoming even less interesting because we're moving more towards doing things on things like GitHub and so on, and building automated script and tooling to make writing documents easier. But without a doubt, the datatracker.ietf.org is where you'll find all of the technical resources, pointers to the mailing lists, the mailing list archives, and so on. Remote participation, our fine Meetup team, as I said, they do all of the online streaming video. Those are captured, posted to YouTube. They are also maintained by the Secretariat on internal IETF servers. We recognize, we're recently recognized that YouTube videos aren't always globally available. There are countries that don't have that access to that. So the IETF is going to figure out what to do, but that only just now came up. Meetup, web-based tool, like I said, it works pretty well. It's gotten much, it's improved over the years as we give lots of feedback. They've developed this in collaboration with the IETF and its feedback. The network. This is like one of the cool things about the IETF meetings. The week before, a group of people swoops in, set up their own hardware, in coordination with the local authorities. They get their own, fiber optic lines to, the hotel, and we take over the whole network. So, Marriott access code, priority access, you don't need any of that. There's posters down near the Reg desk that talk about this in more detail. I think there's one, right outside here. It's set up, by the day before the meeting starts. It comes down on Friday, after the last meeting ends, more or less. We have various things. We have IETF legacy, which is unencrypted. We have encrypted traffic. If you ever, so anything that says IETF or IETF-hotel, IETF NAT64, any of those are all run by the IETF. If any of them need a name and password, they are both IETF. So there is a terminal room. It's still called a terminal room, even though terminals don't really exist anymore, right? And there are people there who can help. The biggest use of the terminal room is someone has to go, print out a document, or, boarding passes on Thursday night, very common. But there's also people there who can help. If you have network connectivity problems, you can create a ticket, and the network people are really very active. Some of the people running the IETF network have been involved in the IETF since day one, are Postel Award winners, and they still volunteer their time to come and set up this network that exists for a week. It's kind of interesting when you go to a search and you go to Google or something like that, and you can see that it first thinks you're in, I think for the first day, it thought I was in Montreal. So I was getting ads for Montreal restaurants. Then they updated all the information, and now Google recognized that I'm in Thailand, so I'm getting, Thai ads. Google, Bing, whatever. Jabber. XMPP, it is an IM instant messaging client, the instant messaging protocol developed at the IETF. There are a number of clients available. To join the chat room, it says usually, it's not usually, it's almost always. Working group name at jabber.ietf.org, that's a group chat. Everybody can join that. There's sometimes people ask questions, hey, what did this guy mean, woman mean, when they just said this, or wait, that's really wrong. There's a lot of sarcasm and snarky comments. And this is how remote participants who don't want to do video get their input into the meetings. They can type something, and the official Jabber scribe will come up and say, so-and-so on Jabber said this. We also, in the Jabber room, the scribe also says, here's the deck that we're now talking about, page 2, page 3, page 4. It also, they'll emphasize who's talking at the mic sometimes if it wasn't clearly said by the person speaking. Above all, enjoy. A lot A lot of people smiling, a lot of people tired by the end of the week. It's fun. It's a pretty amazing chance to change and add things to the internet, which is, not, 30, 60, 90, 100 people in a room can work on something and make a fundamental change, right? That will affect literally billions of people. It's cool. The survey. Last time we did this, and Anshul and I both gave the survey, both gave this talk at the previous IETF. We had 3 respondents, and they all said, "Wow, cool." But we're really looking for feedback. Say, "Oh, Rich's jokes didn't go over very well," or whatever. The point is, all the responses are really listened to and paid attention to, even if there's only 1 or 2. So we encourage you to get the feedback. EduTeam is how to reach the people who organize this and all of the other tutorials. There's another one on how to bring in new work. There's various, I think there's a transport area tutorial coming up. So is that it? Okay. I'm going to end with an example of humming because it's unusual and it's cool. So there's a couple of things about it that are interesting and part of what makes the IETF different from other SDOs. First of all, it's really hard to tell who else is humming along with you. So like if we did a vote kind of thing and people raise their hands, you could say, "Oh yeah, that, Jaya is saying in favor of that, so I want to be with him." You can't do that. So it's a much more independent decision. You can't tell, especially if you're standing here at the front of the room, who is humming. So I can't pick out people and divide them. We take the hums as a way to establish a consensus. One of the slides Anshul said has, of course, this being the IETF, we wrote up a document, an RFC, on what humming means, how to do humming and what it means. So the way it works is the chair, when they're going to call for a hum, will say, here's the options, and then we'll ask for the hums. So the 3 options are, did you find this tutorial worthwhile? Did you not find this worthwhile? And then the standard question at the end, option at the end is always, you don't have enough information to know yet. So hum now if you found this worthwhile. Okay, hum now if you did not find this worthwhile. Hum now if you need more information. So we'd say we had a pretty good consensus that this was a worthwhile tutorial. And then the other typical thing is we'll confirm that on the mailing list, because the IETF mailing lists for a working group are the official way everything gets recorded. So with that, we are just about out of time. If anyone has any questions for either Anshul or myself, just come up to the mic. It's the only way.
Hi, I'm Alice Russo. I'm part of the RFC editor. And I just wanted to point out that the RFC editor is here this week, as well as Ayanna, Sabrina from Ayanna. You can find us near the registration desk usually. If you have questions about what the RFC editor does or what Ayanna does, we're very happy to speak with you.
And you have candy, right?
Typically, there's also some candy. You don't have to have a question to come by and grab some candy.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm Thiago from Brazil. My question is, has the IETF ever been hosted in Latin America?
Yeah, like 2 years ago, we were in Buenos Aires.
Okay, thank you.
It was cool. It's really neat.
Just a precision. I'm asking the question because I think in the beginning you mentioned that the IETF rotates from North America and then Europe and then Asia, and Latin America wasn't in that rotation.
Sorry for my, it has traditionally been the US or Canada, but we have that in Latin America, and I'm sure we'll do it again. Okay, thank you for coming. If there's any questions, you know how to reach people. Thank you.